I know that I remember where I was on the day this. I was in California at my daughter's house watching TV.
I was actually in middle school when it happened.
Were you? Were you aware of it?
Yeah, I was down the street from when it happened. Originally when it happened, most people thought that it might have been a gas line that erupted.
Yeah.
So they didn't know that there was an actual car bomb or explosion.
Right.
Prior to April 19th, 1995, I'll kind of give you a brief history of what it looked like here. We'd be standing in what used to be 5th Street where the pool is.
Uh-huh.
Over there where you see the parking lot used to be a 7-story YMCA building.
Okay.
Right there where that tree is, that big tree where the Praetorium is and the terrace benches, used to be a parking lot.
Okay.
Where she's standing, where the end of the terrace benches are, and some of that walkway was a tall, skinny building known as the Athenian building. It was long. It stretched back to where that dark brick walkway in front of that building was. It was a house, Job Corps, some restaurants, and some office spaces. Mm-hmm. Right here where these trees are is actually the Oklahoma Water Resources Board, where it was. That used to be the Oklahoma General Records building. It had a printing press and a loading dock that stretched out here to Harvey, where the Children's Center is.
My husband worked there, not when it happened, but like
prior to it.
Before.
Yeah, it's been there. The building's been there since the 20s.
Wow.
Right here where the grass and the chairs are, this actually used to be the footprint of the federal building itself. So the federal building stood right there where the grass is.
Yeah.
Over there where the statue of Jesus is, used to be the Catholic Church Rectory. Across the street over here where the post office is, used to be the actual some law firms, and where the post office parking lot is where the post office used to be. Within 20 blocks, over 300 buildings were damaged. 16 of them actually had to come down, some of which I just mentioned.
Yeah.
Now this happened at 9:02 a.m. on April 19th, 1995. Other than the bombing itself, there was some other historic things that happened on April 19th, 1995. Well, not 1995, but April 19th itself. April 19th was the first time that Americans shot back at the British to fight back in the Revolutionary War.
Wow.
That's why we call it Patriots Day.
Yeah.
Also in 1993, the Branch Davidian complex at Waco, Texas was burned down on April 19th, 1993. That plays into this actual event here, both of those. Now, if you count this pine tree right here, 5 pine trees to our left, that's actually where the truck was parked. And there was a small curb cutout or a quick loading area. So that 5th pine tree is actually where ground zero was. There's a 20-foot Ryder truck holding 4,800 pounds of explosives in it. The blast was felt up to 50 miles north of here, Stillwater, Oklahoma. Soon after the wake of the attack, people wanted to have a memorial to not forget what happened here. So they came up with a committee of survivors, of just people that were really concerned, family members also. They came up with the mission statement. The mission statement can be found inside the brochure, but it's also found on these 2 giant gates on the outside. That mission statement says, we come here to remember those that were killed, those who survived, and those changed forever. May all who leave here know the impact of violence. May this memorial offer comfort, peace, strength, hope, and serenity. They put that on there because whenever you're coming into the memorial, you're entering in through these gates usually. When you enter in, they wanted you to be prepared for coming into the memorial. So they also offer this gap in between these gates. The gap is to represent you not only leaving your daily lives and your bustle behind, but also to prepare you for coming into such an emotional, tragic event. When you come in, one of the first things you hear is water flowing. That water is to add a peaceful backdrop to the site to help calm people's emotions and just help out with the pleasantness of the site itself. Now you see up on these gates, you see the 901 and the 903. These are known as the gates of time. They frame the moment when the actual explosion went off. 901 is the last minute of innocence, and 903 is the minute after to symbolize the first moment of healing, but also when lives were changed forever. So they frame that moment of 902 when the blast went off, and everything between these gates is a result of that time. Now this reflecting pool is not only to reflect on what happened at 902, but also to actually give reflection. That's why they use dark granite, and it's very shallow, because from afar it could look like it could be deep, but it's not. And so you see trees where there used to be buildings, you see people. These are the things that were changed forever because of what happened at 902. And they wanted to show that to people. Now these chairs over here, this is a field of empty chairs. There's 168 chairs to represent the people that died in this blast. These 5 closest to us are the people that died outside of the building as a result of the blast, but were not in the building itself. 2 were across the street in the Oklahoma Water Resources Board. 1 was in the Athenian building, 1 was crossing the street to the Athenian building, and 1 was actually a rescue worker that got hit by falling debris. The rest of the chairs are listed in 9 rows to represent the 9 floors. Their names are on there alphabetically throughout the agency in which they were visiting or working that morning. They are also in the pattern of the void itself that was made to the building. So if you're looking from a bird's eye view looking down, it actually, like a giant puzzle piece, can fit into where the building was destroyed, and they wanted to symbolically make the building whole again using those chairs. Now there are 3 chairs that have 2 names on it. Those chairs are for the women that were pregnant. And so what we do is we say there was 171 people that lost their lives in this blast. The remaining walls to the building itself are down there. It's the north and east wall. We call that the Survivors Chapel. We saw it fitting to put the names of the survivors on the surviving wall. So what we did was, there was salvaged pieces of granite with the names of the survivors on those walls over there. There's over 800 names for the people that were within a 2-block radius of the building that survived. The pathway you see is also paved with the salvaged pieces of granite from the building itself. Now across the pool, you see these trees. These trees are known as the Rescuer's Orchard. The ones closest to us are the Chinese pistache and Armor maple trees, represent those that came from afar to help in their rescue efforts. The trees over there across the walkway going up to that big tree are known as the Oklahoma Redbud. Those are the ones closest to the survivors, the Oklahomans, the first on the site. The big tree up on the top of the hill in the middle of that pictorium is known as the Survivor's Tree. The reason it's known as the Survivor Tree, on that morning when the blast happened, it was actually in a parking lot. Cars were thrown into that tree, debris, shrapnel, and actually some of the gas tanks actually ignited and caught that tree on fire. They thought it was going to die, so the FBI was going to cut it down and use it for evidence. But in the amount of time that it took for them to get to the tree to cut it down, it started to re-leaf and come back to life. So the community said, hey, you can't cut this down. Not only is it giving us hope and inspiration, but it's also a sign of our resilience as survivors to this attack. And so we honor those survivors with that tree and deemed it the Survivor Tree. And still to this day, it continues to be resilient and grow from what happened here. Now, children wanted to help in their rescue efforts also. They couldn't come carry people out of the building. They couldn't carry heavy debris. But what they could do is they started sending in loving and encouraging messages to these rescue workers to push them on in their rescue efforts. So we honor those children with the Children's Center over there in front of the museum. You'll see giant chalkboards on the ground for people to leave messages of hope and encouragement today. And those are to honor those children and their letters. Those children actually also sent in hand-painted pieces of tile that make that wall up over there. Those were to encourage the rescue workers. One side is nothing but handprints. It is to symbolize children sending in their healing hands. Today, people still send in their healing hands, children of all ages, by placing their hands in the pool and coming up to these bronze gates and leaving them there for at least 3 seconds. But it leaves a little bit of themselves behind. You see that these handprints are there and they're left there forever. And people continue to do that to this day. But another way that people leave things to remember their loved ones or just people here and never forget is this fence that you see out here. That fence was actually the first memorial to the site because that fence was actually the border, or shall I say barrier, to keep people out of the site because it was too dangerous and unstable. But people started hanging things on there to remember their loved ones, to give hopeful messages to people. And so what happened is when this opened up on April 19, 2000, this memorial, the day after, some survivors and some family members from the blast actually picked up that section of the fence and carried it over here. And they made it a permanent part of this memorial.
Wow.
And so they concreted it in, and it is now a permanent part of this memorial, and people still to this day leave things behind. That's pretty much the brief history and the symbolisms of the site itself. But there's much more history to it, and if there's any more questions you guys have, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
That was great.
Yes.